Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live event, Journeys and Destinations, a live roundtable on career pathways. We're joined today by Jackie Stapleton, Andrew Baines, and Wendy Edwards in this live session, talking about just that, a live roundtable on career pathways at Exemplar Global's Expo on what else? Career pathways. In this session, as I mentioned, I'm joined by three of our very excellent speakers from our Expo who recorded sessions with us. You probably have seen their sessions already. If you haven't, you still have a few days to check out the sessions that are available on our Expo, so go ahead and check that out. Jackie Stapleton is the founder of Auditor Training Online. Andrew Baines is president and CEO of Exemplar Global, and Wendy Edwards is our director of product and quality assurance here at Exemplar Global. So in this presentation, we're going to take a look at the sessions that we had our speakers present for you. They're going to give you a quick recap of those. Then we're going to have a conversation. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our presenters. Anything you'd like to know, either about their presentations or anything in general about the topic of career pathways, career development in this great industry of ours. So if you have questions, just go ahead and use the Q&A button, which is right on your screen. It's right at the bottom of your screen there. If you have a particular person you want to ask questions of, let me know that, and then I'll ask those questions to that person. If it's just a general question, just let us know that too, and I'll throw them out to the panel. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jackie and let Jackie give you a quick update on her presentation that she presented here at the Expo. So Jackie, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. I love that, journeys and destinations, because it's a good segue to really what I shared in the Expo. There's two main things, and I'll try and keep it on time. I shared the ISO leadership journey. So I shared the journey from being like an explorer, like understanding or being curious about what's out there, getting your certificate, so you've got your qualification, and then moving through to being a learner, that continual learning, and then applying it as a practitioner. And it was all about moving towards becoming a leader in our industry. So there's one thing doing your qualifications, it's another thing applying it, but we want to end up being at the leadership stage, like, you know, as an influencer. And I shared three things that help us to get to that leadership level. And the three things were, as I said, knowledge. We absolutely need knowledge. So that is the first step. That's the foundation that we need. Okay. The next step is actually applying it. It's no good if we just continue and get stuck in this learning loop and just keep doing course after course without actually applying it in the real world. So that's application. And that's where you're going to learn even more about what works and what doesn't, and relearn. And then finally, the third step I shared to get to that leadership end of that journey for us, I think, is the biggest one, and that's soft skills. So emotional intelligence, our leadership skills, how we communicate, how we collaborate. It can even be as simple as our tone and our body language. You know, we're technicians, we understand the standards. That's fantastic, but it's how we apply it and it's how we communicate it, which will take us to that leadership level. So that's what I shared, Mike, in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Well, we'll talk about it more as we continue along here on the panel. So I'm going to turn it over now to Andrew Baines, and let him tell you a bit about his presentation at the Expo.
Thank you, Mike. You know, career pathways, or careers generally, are such an important thing to so many of us. And we've just recently launched a new Exemplar Global community. And right from the start, we've seen that interest in career opportunities is probably one of the most prevalent areas of interest for people. So in my session, I took a very high level look at the conformity assessment industry in the community, based heavily, if not exclusively, around the ISO world, looking who are the players in it, who are the people that, if you find yourself in a position of having come across or been trained as an auditor with somebody like Jackie, you wonder what this opens up for you. So looking at the players, you know, there's the obvious ones like certification bodies, but then there are the people that they work for, the customers of those people. And then there's the supply chain end of life and agents acting on behalf of the consumers, the retailers, for example. There are regulators as well. And also I wanted to just put some context of scale on this, because obviously at times, both as practitioners and as auditors, we can feel somewhat isolated within our own organisations. So giving some indication of the possibilities out there in terms of scale, as well as the diversity of the players, was part of it. And since my presentation, one of the figures that I had up there was the number of ISO 9001 certificates in the world. And since we recorded that session, ISO has released their latest survey, and tells us in there that this was based on 2024 information, that are 1.6 million
Wow.
ISO 9001 certificates out there. And so each one of those has to be externally audited, but they also have to be internally audited. So it's a huge possibility of potential there for people. And that's only quality. There's also environmental, health and safety, food safety, information, and on it goes. The possibilities in terms of the disciplines is equally diverse, and the line that you take is a lot of possibilities in there too. Whether you continue to be an auditor, whether you manage the auditors, whether you go back into senior, to Jackie's point about leadership, there's such a lot of things that can be done in there for good people with the good skills, both technical and the soft skills. The possibilities are boundless.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I agree. Great opportunities, boundless opportunities out there. We'll talk more about it again, as we said, later here in the session. So I'll turn it over now to Wendy. And Wendy, you can talk a little bit about your presentation and more broadly your role and what you've been working on with us.
Sure, thanks, Mike. So our presentation was around INATE and the certifications available for INATE specialists, which are the engineering roles. So this is, coming down to quite a specialist niche, and much like the other areas where we sort of fall into these roles, I don't think anybody starts out to be an EMC engineer, but it's one of the things that you can become. And it's really important that we have current knowledge because of the speed of change. It's important that if we're working on things where people could die, where the interference may have catastrophic consequences, that knowledge is kept current as well. And the INATE certifications it's a brand that Exemplar Global's owned for some time now. It's well founded with really good technical support, and it's something that not everybody perhaps is aware it exists, but it is a great product. So our presentation focused on folks that work in that area and may be interested in becoming certified and understanding what sort of products there are available. INATE remains the certification of choice, particularly in the United States, where it's built into some of the regulations, rules, and even contracting agreements. It's a valuable personnel certification to hold.
Wonderful. Yes, great opportunities again abound, as we say. So thank you, Wendy, for that. Well, I'm going to stop the share now. We'll come back to this at the end of the session because I want to really focus on the four of us here, mostly you three, because I'm just moderating and keeping it going. Before we kind of get to a conversation, there's a couple things I wanted to know about, but I wanted to remind you all out there who are watching, use that little Q&A button right at the bottom of your screen. If you do have a question you want to ask any of our panelists, I'll be sure to get them over to them, and we'll have a nice lively discussion about them. If you have a particular person you'd like to pose your question to, just call that out in your question, and I'll be sure to get them to the right person, and we'll have, as I mentioned, a good discussion. So before we turn to the questions from the audience, and I see that we'll have some people queuing up and getting them to us, I have a question that I wanted to kind of pose to all of you, a little fun little starter, if we will. So what was the one, if there is one, the one piece of advice that you may have had at any point in your career? It could have been years ago, it could have been yesterday, could have been today, that you got that really landed with you, that you say, that really made a lot of sense, that really put me in a place where I, could move along this career pathway and gave me a perspective that I really appreciated and I even think about and reflect on to this day. Anybody want to jump on that one? I have some of myself, but if
I'll approach that, Mike. I think less a piece of advice than an observation. I've been lucky enough myself to have had quite a long career in this myself now, and it's an observation of that time, and that's really just to keep an open mind to possibilities. If you're open to the possibilities, you'll see the opportunities that are there. If you're not, then you perhaps are closed to them. And there are so many options that come along if you have an open mind that's available to see the chances as they arrive. Then who knows what's possible. You would never have been able to follow the career that I've followed, for example, because it wasn't defined anywhere. So how were you ever going to find that? The other aspect of it for me that's important is to have a view to look for solutions rather than necessarily problems. My first employer, who was the person who sent me off to be trained as an auditor, we worked in an environment where he used to walk around every day and he'd tell you to do things and pick them up. But when I came back from that auditor training, I thought, how are we going to do this? Because we don't document things, we don't do internal audits, we don't even have management reviews. So you had to think laterally about how it was going to be defined. So I think finding a way to do it in what you want to do, whatever it is in life, is worth pursuing as well.
I like that. Good message.
Look,
Wendy, Jackie?
I'll jump in on that, Andrew, because I suspect it's going to build on something Jackie will talk about and really just reflects on her presentation. So for me, quite early on, the piece of advice I was given was, it's not all about the technical stuff. I had a sort of default setting about learning all that technical knowledge, and the advice I was given was around the people and the softer skills and balancing out my learning portfolio so that as I went on my career journey, I would balance it out between the three, and that's held me in really a really good place for this end of my career. And I didn't necessarily do it in order. It's okay if it's not done in order. Just gather up the pieces along the way, because you'll use them when the time is right. Liz, back to you, Jackie.
Thank you. Yeah, I can certainly relate to what Andrew and Wendy, you have both said there. When you said be open-minded, Andrew, I was thinking a big thing, and this might not be, this is more of an observation, sort of the same as you. It's more about just get started. Too many people that I work with, it's like, no, I just need to get my logo right, or no, my website's not 100% yet, or I need to get some work shirts with my, no. you honestly just need to start, and then you will find your way. And it goes into what both of you also just said. You can't find what you're meant to be doing unless you make a start first. And I would say nearly 100% of the time, what you start out doing is not what you end up doing, because that's the journey you're taking, and you're learning along the way, and you're finding your little niches and things that light you up, and things that you can see are out there challenging people that you can help them with. So I wrote down, just start and you'll find your way. But the other big thing that I've seen pop up in the last couple of years is be yourself. I know initially for me, and it goes into this whole, it's technical. We need to know, no, I've got my standards here. We need to know our standards, blah, blah, yeah. But we don't always have to, wear, I don't know, black cardigans with leather elbow patches and try to not be ourselves. It's our own uniqueness that gets us through, and then we then build that rapport with people that can relate to our own uniqueness. So my uniqueness is different to yours, Wendy, and it's different to Andrew's, but there's people out there that will enjoy working with either one of us more just because of who we are. So, and you'll enjoy yourself a lot more if you're you. So bring your uniqueness to the table.
Do you know, another thing I could just mention here would be, so many, I think, of people that I've worked with over the years in this area we suffer from imposter syndrome. We think
Oh,
that,
yes.
oh,
Yes.
why are they letting me do this? Why are they listening to me when I go out? When I first started, I was about 30, I guess. And I thought, well, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel here with me, aren't they? So why are they? And having the confidence of what you've learned and the experience that you've got is invaluable too. Acknowledge the fact that you'd have this insecurity at times, but to use that to your benefit, to be down to earth, to be relatable, to be empathetic, and so on to the situation that others are in.
I think that's
Completely agree. Yeah. Sorry, Mike. Yeah, we don't need to know all the answers. It's okay to say, "Oh, I'm not sure. Can you leave it with me?" It's we need to know the people to go and ask. And that was another one actually I was thinking is building these relationships. I have built so many amazing relationships, even like with the three of you as a great example. It's the people within the industry that will help you, and then you can help them. So don't hide yourself in the corner. We're a community. So, and well, that feeds right into what Exemplar Global have just released recently.
That's right.
We're a community. So please join and engage and participate, because there's people out there that can help you, and you can also help them.
Yes.
And I think that's so well said, Jackie, because it's ultimately a people business. As much as it's technical, as much as it's about standards and documentation and conforming and non-conforming and everything else that goes into it. Ultimately, it's the ability to work with people and to help people and to have people help you that really make this business work. So I think that's a really fair comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
I had another question. We are starting to get a few questions queued up, but I wanted to get to this one too because it's one that I think about all the time, which is we definitely don't. I was going to qualify, but we definitely don't have enough people coming into this industry. We definitely don't have enough people who are even know about the opportunities necessarily in auditing. And maybe we're preaching to the choir here because people that are watching this expo probably already know all about it, probably already doing the work in some way, shape, or form. But how can we, as an industry, all of us take responsibility to talk to people that we meet, either in or outside of manufacturing or service industries, what have you, about the opportunities in auditing? What should we be doing?
Well, it's a real issue for the whole sector, is attracting and retaining people to build the skills and experience in this, and there are some reasons for that. It's potentially an intrinsically stressful job. You're going into places, you're asking people. Well, this might be your own organisation doing internal audits, but you're the one that's going asking questions of people as to how you establish the conformance of what they're doing, the compliance with the nominated standard. And there's always that risk of being able to say, you don't know what you're doing, or you've got this wrong, or there's a non-conformance in there. And yet, if you are able to handle these situations, you can make a real difference. And the ability to make a real difference in time, whether it's internal or in external audits, is something that's really worth doing. So attracting people into this as a career, recognizing that not everybody's got years and years of experience. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to do one audit before you can do 10, before you can do 100, before you can do 1,000. And encouraging people to make a start and to continue the professional development and build the skills. Competence is about the application of knowledge and skills. It's not just about doing the course. It's not just about having the skills. It's about doing both of those, and then how do you apply them and continue to build them. It used to be that it was an attractive career, is perhaps less so now, but the pathways that are available to you, built off a platform of these careers, of these careers that can be built from a platform of this start, I think are manifold and will give the returns. And that's not just financial, it's in satisfaction, it's in job satisfaction, in the difference that you make, whether it be for a sense of mission and purpose, or whether it be to specialize in a particular area. There's so much reward that comes from this that we should all be working together to demonstrate the value that's there for people, the satisfaction that's in it. And there is that need. I remember that figure I just mentioned earlier, 1.6 million sites. And that's only within the ISO conformity infrastructure. There are mirrored versions of this in other sectors as well, whether it be in education or healthcare or aerospace and so on. So there's a multitude of possibilities out there. And we just want to encourage people to see what those possibilities are.
Oh, you're on mute, Mike.
Sorry. Yes, I am. I was typing with one of our attendees, and I wanted to mute myself rather than tap away. We did have a question though that came in, which I think is a fair question. It actually directs to you, Andrew, about your presentation. The question is, so watching Mr. Bain's presentation, I wondered how I can move from one part of his schematic to the other. Okay, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of how you created that. We can do it verbally, maybe, Andrew, because I don't have the share available, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the variety of opportunities and how it all kind of melts together.
In terms of the possibility of the players, you mean? Mike?
Well, of moving from one. I think this individual is at an original equipment manufacturer from the email, and it looks like maybe I'm just postulating, maybe they're interested in how you would go from working in industry to becoming an auditor, let's say. Let's use that as an example.
Well, you don't have to change to be an auditor. You go on the auditor training course, as Jackie runs, and you've got the foundation for it. You've got the start. And if you have shown an interest in that exercise, so you go on a training course, whether it be modular or a 5-day residential one or whatever it might be, if that's of interest to you, then very much to Jackie's point, just go and do an audit. Just start. Go back into your own organisation and do an audit. There's no right or wrong about it. You will be doing something useful doing that. It's true that if you wish to go into full-time auditing, again, within your own organisation or in supply chain auditing, you'll connect in with those that are influential in that. And if you do want to go and be a third-party auditor working for a certification body, then they advertise positions and they recruit people and they'll train people and so on. But those possibilities will become apparent to you as you get more familiar with the sector and what's happening there. Just don't be put off by that initial, what do I do now? And Jackie, maybe you'll talk more about this, because I know this is something that you're particularly interested in, is what do you do when you first go away from that course and make that first step? I used to make up my own checklist and plan it all by heart, and you just felt you were so prepared. But it's like driving a car. You feel a little clunky to start with, but then you get a bit more proficient and you're doing it much more automatically.
Yeah, and I can add to that, because I think we're probably, if you think you don't have experience in auditing, you're probably wrong, because you're probably already auditing and not realizing it and not using that term, because really auditing is just checking whether you're doing what you say you're doing. So, if you're working within an organization and you're following a procedure, for example, and you might be doing it yourself, well, you're following it. And then you know how sometimes, and I know it happens here at Atoll, if I follow a procedure and think, well, that doesn't make sense, or I don't follow it because I think I've got my own ideas and I do it differently and I make a mistake, that's identifying gaps in the process, which is really all we're doing. So I use a great example of when I've got 2 adult sons. They use, obviously when they were at school, I use a great example of auditing their homework. So their criteria back in those days was what they'd written in their diary, finish the maths textbook, page 15 to 17. I'd come home and say, have you done your homework? Closed question. Yes. Can you show me? Open question. So then they have to show me the evidence. So then I need to understand what the criteria is to understand whether the evidence meets the criteria. So of course I cross match and say, well, have you done all of this? That's an audit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you, I think one of you used the word awareness before. I think if you go away and look at what you might be doing day to day within your work, within a volunteer position, even within your home life, there's elements of checking stuff. And if you can just get comfortable with that and realize, oh, I'm actually already doing this to a degree. It may not be called that. And then it gives you that confidence to go, oh, as Andrew said, I love that idea. I do say the same, Andrew. Just go and have a go at conducting an audit. Make it a small scope, just a little one area, one department, one process, and just give it a go. Just have fun with it. And I always say, just be curious. That's all it is as an auditor. You're learning stuff. It's exciting. So you're there just to ask questions and learn stuff and see how it all fits in together. So absolutely. And that's that application, just those little bits.
It's interesting, Jackie, that first boss of mine that I mentioned earlier, he used to just walk around the factory every morning. Every morning he would walk around, and what he was looking for, and this is what I had to work out when he came back, and how am I going to document all this as a quality manager? What he was looking for is that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and he would handle it. If this was handling it in a very old-fashioned way, I would have to say, but nevertheless, he would handle it if things weren't as he expected them to be. So you start from that point. Now I know once you move into this as a chosen profession, there can be expectations that you build up your experience and you do so many audits that you might need to get your certification with Exemplar Global, for example. But that shouldn't stop you starting. You still need to have done those first few audits. You need to have gone out and done them. And then somebody will log them and you'll learn from them. And hopefully you might have the opportunity to work with somebody else that's already got some experience, perhaps as part of an audit team. And then in time, you'll learn to be the leader of a team. So you become a lead auditor. Then maybe you become an audit manager and you manage the audits of several teams that are doing that. Maybe you become the one that makes the formal certification decision, who's not one of the auditors that was out doing the audit, but is doing the decision on behalf of a certification body. Maybe you're the one that represents the buyer of a product in a supply chain audit, and you're assessing against contract, and are they meeting the specifications that you've set for them, and how do you handle that? So it's just a case, get out there, do it, understand what the requirements are going to be, and then set about your career.
If I could just expand on that, it really is just building on a point that Andrew made around being curious, and the point that Jackie made around, working your way through all your different skill sets. And Andrew will laugh at this, but he also knows it's true, which is for me, sort of started at this end, looked forward to see, I think that's where in this ecosystem I'd like to try next, which for me was going from working in an industry to being an auditor. And I went forward, looked at what all the requirements were, and then from here just started gathering up the pieces. It's like, okay, so that open mind allowed me to say, oh, well, if I take that opportunity, it gives me an experience which will build towards this criteria that I want, so that by the time the years had passed and I got to that location in my career, I had all the little pieces, and they weren't linear, they weren't in the right order, but I was open-minded enough to see, oh, that opportunity will fulfill this need, so therefore I'm going to lean this way when I have a choice.
Wouldn't it be nice to see that people could see auditing or being a practitioner, for that matter, is a way to get to your goals that you're trying to do, to get, whether that be in senior management or a technical specialist or whatever it might be, that we actually encouraged people and showed them that this is a viable pathway to achieving those longer term goals.
Yep.
Yeah. There's some of those large foods providers where you can't work in senior roles unless you've worked in quality and have that audit knowledge. So
it's a beautiful summary of the question that we just had about, where do I go? How do I move from one to the other, Wendy? And it also ties in with another question that we had, which was very similar, from an attendee asked, well, I just completed a training course. What now? and which we kind of addressed in that same answer. And I think that it all, to me, comes down to being intentional as an individual, as a professional, being intentional with what you want. Many people kind of have just, when you talk to them, they'll say, well, I just kind of landed in this field. And that works too, but there's room for being, yeah, Andrew, I mean, many, but there's also room for being very intentional. And there's no wrong way to do it, I think, as long as, again, you keep your eyes open, you're curious, as you mentioned, Jackie, and that you are ready for what comes.
Well, Mike, I think the other thing here too is to encourage people to enjoy the ongoing professional development, because things do change so fast. Whether it be the standards that change, whether it be the way the industry works, it might be the emergence. Currently, it's AI, isn't it? But robotics in automotive, for example, you've got to keep up to date. And if you enjoy learning, if you're a natural learner, you'll enjoy that development. And also, these are quite transferable skills. So if you start off in the quality world, for example, then health and safety, environmental, food safety, information security, AI now are all new topics that have come along. So you can get a great deal of satisfaction by continuing your education as you go through this as well. And that can be punctuated with qualifications if that's either necessary or desirable for you. There are places where you can get recognition of that learning that you've done and your achievements.
That's a fair comment. It actually ties in with something I wanted to bring back up with regard to Wendy's presentation, which was specifically within the scope of Anarte, but it really more broadly can affect anything. Well, both things that Exemplar Global has to offer, or really many different organizations that help to certify folks within this field, is how do you how are those things built? How are the requirements developed? What do you need to do? How do you know what you need? How many hours or how many audits you need? Or how do you do these things? I mean, there's a lot of thinking, and Wendy, you can, I know you know very well, there's a lot of thinking on the back end that goes into what that all means, and making sure that certification in this case has a lot of validity in the market.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, so on that, Mike, then, so we'll take an Anarte product as an example. You start off with, if you're going to hold this personnel certification, what is the role that you will be undertaking? Because that tells you then actually what are the key skills, knowledge, attributes, competencies that this person should have. And then you go through a process with your stakeholders to work out, well, which of those do we need to know have been checked as prerequisites before they turn up, such as having an engineering degree. Which of these things are things that should be part of the personnel certification process, such as an exam, evidence of work experience or particular skills. And then those start to inform what the requirements will actually be. And then those requirement documents are applied for a period of time. In this case, it has an exam. So we need to make sure that the exam stays current, fairly reflects what would be expected of someone holding personnel certification. And then just as you do with the ISO standards, there's a planned maintenance cycle where you go through a process of reviewing it. Is it still okay? Does it need to be changed, and so on? So there is a very robust structure that sits in behind, and it's actually governed by one of the ISO standards, being ISO 17024.
And, Jackie, you know this as well. I mean, it also, training is a big part of that too. I mean, certainly, people need to reach out. There's opportunities all over, but, the ability to be recognized by like an Exemplar Global, not to toot our own horn too much, but I mean, the fact that you have that connection and that people know that there's a validity to it that has been assessed and has been looked at is very valuable.
Absolutely. We have an FAQ and it's titled, I was actually looking at it in the last week, and it says, "Are you legitimate?" Which I'm thinking, I think we might need to change that. But it came about because that's a question that we used to get many years ago. Like, well, especially being online, and there's a lot of training providers now fully online. It's a valid question. So we have an FAQ that links to the Exemplar Global register, so they can go and search for us to confirm that we are actually legitimate and we're not just putting, you know, an attendance course out there. So that's what we do pride ourselves. Well, yes, we pride ourselves on building our courses against that performance criteria or those examination profiles, but it's more about ensuring that the content that we're sharing and the assessments actually conforms with something. There's a structure, and that structure helps against that criteria, and the structure obviously against the standards as well. Like we've released focus courses recently. I will not build anything unless there's an ISO standard. That's the first thing I go and look for in my general life is there an ISO standard, because it gives us that structure to then build something from.
Well, talking about that structure, I mean, there's a lot of change. You alluded to it too, Andrew. There's a lot of change afoot in this industry. I mean, you know, artificial intelligence, AI is probably the biggest one. We all talk about it all the time. And I mean, there are standards that are out or in development that address all sorts of things. And, you know, folks that are that want to do this work, that want to do auditing work, conformity assessment work, are hungry for learning about those new things, those new protocols, the things that will change the way work is done in the coming years and decades.
Yeah, it's a great point, and you know, to Jackie's point, there is a weighty body of structure around this in terms of ISO and other standard setters as you go around the place. And one of the options for people, if you're interested in these areas, is to participate in those standard setting organisations, whether you be a national one on a working group, or eventually when you get certain experience, you can do that on a much more international level too. So you can actually be formative in the setting of these things and the structure there and in place. But they're well tried and tested now as well. And there's a reason for where they are, and understanding that dynamic is also very useful. I think it's also a time when gathering information is probably not necessarily easy, but easier than it's ever been. We can Google things, we can chat GPT them. Having a healthy skepticism around those or any source of information is wise. And you know, we've established, I mentioned a couple of times already, this community. So tap into the communities that you can do. You don't have to attend anything in person any longer. You can do it all online at any hour of the night or day, wherever you are in the world. So being able to tap into where knowledge is in any shape or form is very accessible. So asking the questions, participating in things like this, joining communities, putting questions out there, you'll invariably get an answer that'll be pretty near the mark.
And speaking of questions, we are coming up to about 45 minutes in this session. We're going to go for a little while longer. If you do have questions, use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I wouldn't want you to miss out. If you have a question you'd like to have Andrew or Jackie or Wendy address, so feel free to just type it in and send it over to us, and I'll ask it of the group. But as we're doing that and seeing if we get a last minute question here, just going around the room here, maybe starting with you, Jackie. So what do we foresee in the next 5 years? I mean, what do we think that, again, we talked about some of the technological things, the human factors that are important in this business. What do we think that somebody who is watching this and maybe is looking at a fairly longer time frame in this business, what would be the skills, what would be the knowledge that person should look at acquiring if they wanted to succeed in this business?
Yeah, thank you for letting me go first. That was my little chuckle. But something that came to mind when you were asking that, like, obviously, and we're talking about change. So we all know ISO 9001 is under revision, and I think it's next September, apparently, is the date so far. But what I'm most interested in that is under the leadership clause, where they talk about culture, so quality culture. So it's the first time that culture word has turned up actually in the standard, in the requirements. So, and of course it's under leadership. So I think, and this is what I'm working towards, it's going to be understanding, establishing, monitoring, maintaining, improving a quality culture, and what does that look like? And of course, this culture goes in line with what we were talking about before around those soft skills, emotional intelligence. So it's, to me, it might be a challenge for us who do like, as we said, our structure, our standards, words that tell us what this is. But what are the words for a quality culture? So I think that's where we need to start moving towards, and understanding, well, what does this look like? You know, whether you're an internal auditor, a consultant helping businesses to build these systems, well, what's the culture? And you've got the culture of the existing business that's influencing it. You've got the culture of the leadership team as well. So I really do think, and I think maybe Mike, you said it, this is a business of people. So I think this is sort of moving into this light bulb moment around, yeah, it's people, not paper.
I like that.
It's
I like that.
interesting, you know, Jackie. The more you see of this, the more you realise that that's so true. This is all about people, and whether the people have changed the roles that they do, it's still about them and the decisions that they make. For me, Mike, the answer to that question, and it's not unrelated to what Jackie's saying at all, it's going to be about technology, how we use it, how, you know, there's two parts to this, and I'm not just talking about AI here, I'm talking about other technology tools that will be available. Through COVID, we had the challenges of remote auditing, and how would you do that, and how do you, if you can't travel to a place, can you use some of the technologies that are available? But also, can you imagine, I can certainly, where an auditor would have an AI assistant who you can ask questions of, like I have one here in the house. I'm not going to say her name because she'll answer me back and that'll spoil the Expo, but you know who I mean. And somebody like that who can tell you precedent, for example, who could perhaps write your report for you, that for you to check and sign off on due caution. But not only how do we use the technology then, but how do we audit it where it is being used by other people? And technology is changing so fast these days. It's not taking years for an evolution of it. It's taking months and sometimes only weeks for the technology. So keeping up to date with it and being a technophile, I think, will be a really good skill for anybody in the workplace to have, auditors being no exception, or practitioners being no exception. How do you use those tools that are available? One thing that doesn't have an answer, I'm from the food industry as Wendy's too. I don't think we've yet worked out how to smell an environment when you can't go there. You know, one of the things when you're a food auditor, the first thing you do when you walk into an operation room is to smell it. Does it smell clean? Does it smell something wrong with it? You know, I don't know how technology is going to handle that, but many things it can handle. So technology would be my answer to that one.
Nice. And actually, I'm just going to build on both of those. So for me, it's that concept of ongoing learning. So I think, you know, Andrew won't mind me pulling him out as well, but him and I started, you know, at a time when you went to university and you got a degree and you were done. You finished it and it was over, and then you could just lean on that for the rest of your life. And I think I look at my adult son and the way that he absorbs knowledge and learns, and it's not, learning isn't something that he does as a separate activity. It's incorporated into his day. While he's working, he might be listening to a podcast. You know, whenever I talk to him, he's up to date, or he's learning something new and exploring, because it's built into his DNA. It's just how he operates. And I think there's a lot for us to learn with that, because we, even when we do start using our AI tools, we're going to need to be able to look at it with healthy skepticism and go, I think you're fabricating that. That's actually not true. So we'll need that level of knowledge and understanding to allow us to utilize the tools in a way that's intelligent to apply to the culture, the people, and so on that we're auditing. So for me, that pulls those three things together.
Yeah, just ties together what Andrew just said. It has to pass the smell test. As he just said about auditing food locations. Well, right at the end here, I did get a question. This always happens, but so I wanna throw this out to the group. See if we can toss around a bit. I mean, there's a broader point here. As a consultant with ISO 9001 under review, do we run off the review standard or the current one? And obviously, we don't know enough about the 2026 version of 9001 right now to do much. But the broader idea that maybe I want to get to is, what is the process over the course of time? And I know it's a multi-year process in terms of somebody who holds a certification to audit against a standard like 9001 as it gets revised. What's the notification? How does that go so that people that are in the space know about it and know what they have to do and when to which version of the standard?
That's a really great question, Mike. And I'm going to start with it just from a personnel certification body perspective, which will then lead to training providers, which can then come back to the actual site. So I think one of the first things that we've agreed in principle is that we're not going to run off hearsay, because it can create a lot of work, a lot of expense, a lot of angst, and then things change. And we've seen this with other standard bodies where the timeline's been pushed out or the content's changed dramatically over time. So we'll wait until the standard's actually issued and we'll work off data. We are actually working on pulling together to share with our larger community, so both the individuals and the training providers, the timeline, the flow, similar to the ISO process around once the standard comes out, we'll communicate within XYZ timeframe. You'll have this period of time to adjust so that the training is available for people to do the transition. We'll make the availability of the new requirements if they need to change. We'll give a commitment to, so this is when you'll know what additional knowledge you'll need to have, what the options are for getting that knowledge, and then we'll have the transition process. So this is how long you've got to do it, and then there's a hard stop. So that's from a personnel certification training provider perspective. And then ISO typically works with the certification bodies around when it's retired, and it's a 3-year is normally the transition from one out to the next. But actually, Jackie, it's probably an area that would be good for you to comment on, being in the training provider and consultant world.
Yeah, so my first thought as like also a certification auditor, and you're spot on, Wendy, like as a consultant, no, you should just be using the current revision. That is it at the moment. It's always good to, like continue your learning and understand what the draft is and what it includes. But as Wendy said, it could change and the dates do change. But once it is approved and published and it's out there, then as a consultant, if that's what you're asking, then that's what you should be using. But obviously there is a transition period. So they get as a certification body will give the organisations that are certified a 3-year transition window. What we normally do as certification auditors is that first audit, whether it's research or surveillance, we do a little bit of a gap analysis. Okay, and it's all based on what are the changes. So then we're giving our clients, the certified organisation, an opportunity to see, well, what does my current system do to meet the change, and are there any gaps? So we'll add that on to our audit. But then it's up to them to determine, well, we can fill those gaps in X amount of time, as long as it's within that 3-year window, which we normally do within that recertification cycle. So there's plenty of time to transition. From a training provider's perspective, I'm a bit different to Wendy because I want to be ready. So, and we sort of fell in a hole with 14,001. That's a separate story. Let's stick to 9,001. And also 19,011 is changing. So there's actually 3. So I like starting to build off the drafts. And then once the changes come through, then we just have to loop back and make sure and make those changes and hope that there isn't something massively different. Because I want to ensure as a training provider, as soon as they say it's ready, it's out there, we have something to put out to all of you, because both of you have mentioned it. We're all curious. We love learning. We want to be on top of these things as people working in the industry. So I want to make sure that we have something available, whether it's, and this is up to Exemplar Global for us as well, because we await your direction. It's, well, is it a bridging course? Is it a completely new course? That is unknown until we get that guidance. But at this stage, just to answer that question, you must use the current revision of 9001. That is current.
And Andrew, last word to you. Yes.
I'm sorry, Mike. I was just going to say to endorse what Jackie's saying, that is the only legitimate version of it at the moment. What I would say is that, communication is generally pretty good, and there's a no surprises element to this. If you want to find out what the status in the cycle is, you can find it. You can go onto an ISO website and it'll tell you the stage of development. For the 9001, it's in a final discussion stage at the moment, so it's out. You can comment on it. We don't know what will come through in the final version, but you can have a say on it at this stage, and the timelines and the history of it will be apparent as well. So you can keep up to date with where it's at and when it's going to be coming out. Move in the right circles as you were. Again, I'm going to come back to the community that we've got here, but we're not the only one. Move in the right circles and you'll hear people talking about it. It's not something that's going to be hidden away and then dropped on everybody, is it?
Agreed.
Well, that was a fun, very fast 1 hour. I could do another hour with you guys. That was really entertaining. I think we all appreciated that, especially those of us that are here and listening to all the sessions here at the Expo. I want to thank our three great presenters today, Andrew, Wendy, and Jackie. You guys are the best. Thank you for doing that.
Cheers, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
It was fun. All right, and we'll see you all here at the next session at Exemplar Global's Online Expo.